What crazy stuff happened in the year 2001 that got overshadowed by the 9th of November? U/Bobifan54 responded. In February 2001, FBI agent Robert Hansen was arrested for selling classified info to Soviet and Russian intelligence agencies. He'd been conducting this espionage since 1979. I feel like it was big news for like a month, then died down once he was thrown in federal supermax prison. I always sort of linked the two, his arrest and 9/11, since they happened the same year. U/Ramtengo responded. A huge investigation revealed that the McDonald's monopoly campaign was fraud since 1989 and had almost no legitimate winners. One guy was giving winning pieces to friends and family, and later the mafia. When this broke, it was mere weeks before the 9th of November, so it got quickly overshadowed. Edit, double-checking my facts, it went to trial on September 10th, wild. U/Someday Me Dear Will Come responded. George W. Bush issued an executive order banning federal funding for research on any new embryonic stem cell lines going forward. He interrupted evening TV and did a live address to the nation from the Oval Office to announce it. This was on August 10th. His next address to the nation was on September 11th. U/Deleted responded. Rainbow Farm was a well-known marijuana campground concert space run by a gay libertarian couple in Newport Township, very rural part of the state. They regularly hosted marijuana cultural and pro-legalization events. This was pre-legalization, but there were still plenty of pot festivals around Michigan, and they were early organizers of the statewide legalization initiative. Basically, a local prosecutor and law enforcement got tired of tolerating them, and started a harassment campaign, looking for any excuse to search the place and charge the owners. Eventually they did, and it started a long series of events culminating in the couple being charged with a variety of drug, weapon, and tax-related felonies. The cops took their 11-year-old son and put him in foster care, and started the process of seizing the property using civil asset forfeiture. On August 31st, 2001, the couple, Tom and Rolly, skipped their court date and instead started burning every structure on Rainbow Farm to the ground. They started a standoff with the police, and pretty quickly the FBI was called in. Within a few days both men were shot dead by law enforcement. The autopsy showed that Tom was shot 5 times in the head, and 3 times in the chest, just for good measure, I guess. This all happened days before the 9th of November, and likely would have been a huge national story. Writer Dean Kuipers, a Michigan native, wrote a book on the incident. U/AnimeKing1108 responded. In summer of 2001, Fox aired a documentary-styled reality show called Murder in Small Town X. The finale aired just a week before the 9th of November. The winner of the first and only season was a firefighter, and he was one of the first responders at the World Trade Center that was killed. His body wouldn't be discovered until 2 months later. With so much else that happened on the 9th of November, one of the victims being a reality TV star was surprisingly rarely brought up. U/Eligus_MS responded. September 7th, 2001, US Gov announces they won't break up Microsoft as a monopoly. Forgotten in Rumsfeld's speech about the missing funds, the clearest and most important transformation is from a bipolar Cold War world where threats were visible and predictable, to one in which they arise from multiple sources, most of which are difficult to anticipate, and many of which are impossible even to know today. Also, the purpose of the speech was to cut military spending and shift some military control of logistics and base infrastructure to the private sector. U/Sweet Sexiest Jesus responded. System of a Down's Toxicity was released on September 4th. Slayer's God Hates Us All released on September 11th. George Carlin records an album on September 10th called I Kinda Like It When a Lotta People Die. In the set's 10-minute Closer, Uncle Dave, Carlin explains why he likes big, fatal disasters with lots of dead people, asking, "You know what's the best thing I can hear on television? We interrupt this program. You know the worst thing I can hear? No one was hurt. I'm always rooting for a really high death toll, that's why I like natural disasters." N. Earlier joke in the set includes reference to Osama bin Laden and an exploding airplane. Needless to say, the album was shelved until about 2016. U/DOD2190 responded. The disappearance of Sneha Philip. Officially, she's listed as a victim of 9/11, but opinions vary as to what really happened. She had rushed to the scene and was killed while trying to help victims. She was a doctor. She was in the WTC on unrelated business, possibly having breakfast at the windows on the World Restaurant, when the attacks occurred. She was murdered nearby in an incident unrelated to the terrorist attacks, and any evidence of the crime, as well as her remains, was lost in the rubble and by diversion of law enforcement resources. She chose to use the confusion of the day to disappear and start a new life elsewhere. She was known to be having difficulties in both her personal and her professional life. Unexpected Dino Lesson responded. City Party was discovered in 2001. City Party is a genus of oviraptorid dinosaur that lived in Asia during the late Cretaceous period, about 75 million to 71 million years ago. City Party is one of the best-known oviraptorids thanks to a number of well-preserved specimens, including individuals found in brooding positions atop nests of eggs. These nesting specimens have helped to solidify the link between non-avian dinosaurs and birds. City Party was among the largest oviraptorids. It is estimated to have been up to 3 m in length and to have weighed about 80 kilograms. Its skull was highly pneumatized, short, and had a characteristic crest formed by the premaxillar and nasal bones with robust, parrot-like jaws. Both upper and lower jaws were toothless and developed a horny beak. The arms and tail are known to have supported large feathers. U/Arik 1579 responded. When President Bill Clinton left the office, he was interviewed in Australia and was asked a question about international terrorism. His response: "I'm just saying, if I were Osama bin Laden, he's a very smart guy. LVE spent a lot of time thinking about him, and I nearly got him once. Nearly got him. And I could have killed him, but I would have to destroy a little town called Kandahar in Afghanistan and kill 300 innocent women and children, and then I would have been no better than him. And so I didn't do it." This interview happened on September 10, 2001. U/Sculpin IP Alcoholic responded. George Harrison's death the following November probably would have been much bigger news than it was had 9/11 not happened. It also probably would have been under more public scrutiny. He was stabbed 40 times by a home intruder the previous year, and it's been suspected that's what led to his decline in health and later his death. All of the headlines at the time just said he died of cancer, and there was little public discourse or usual celebrity gossip about it. If 9/11 didn't happen, we would all probably think there were 2 Beatles who were murdered by crazy people. U/Bingjong responded. Mariah Carey's album and soundtrack to the same titled movie, Glitter. Hear Me Out. The album was basically a big release to her fans as she rode her R&B and pop fame from the 90s right into the 2000s. It featured some of the biggest R&B and hip-hop artists at the time like Busta Rhymes, Ludacris, and Fabulous, so it was going to be a hit. Guess what else took a hit the same day of release? Her album significantly underperformed, forcing Virgin to drop their contract with her entirely. This was a stain on her career to this day, and it's something she has mentioned before. The album was also never found on any streaming platforms until 2020, which by then had amassed a cult following, and fans stated, the album was ahead of its time. I always found that to be a strange, but fun fact about Mariah Carey lore. U/Offbrand Toby responded. In May 2000, Giuliani announced in a press conference that he was leaving his second wife. His wife reported she learned he was leaving her during that press conference. People started wondering if he had dumped his first wife in a similar fashion. They found out his first wife was someone he had grown up knowing was his cousin. He was an absolute joke until 9/11, which he rode all the way to becoming a serious presidential candidate in 2008. It wasn't until Trump's re-election campaign that we all started to remember how much of an absolute buffoon he. U/Ladera responded. My late hubby's birthday was the 9th of November, 66. Along with a few family members. Never got another birthday after that. Also, he was away from home on a work trip. His flight home was that day. He was upgraded to first class by his employers, but that flight was full, so they put him on the next one out. The flight he got booted off of was one of the hijacked flights. FBI kept him for 2 weeks interrogating him. Was like 3 to 4 days after the attack that I found out he was alive. Sorry for my rant. U/Black Mobius responded. A girl went missing earlier that year. She was presumed a runaway for a while, and a few months went by. I don't recall her being mentioned much as the police didn't have much to go on. Anyways, they found her body on September 10th at 9 p.m, so her death didn't make the evening news. They were going to report it the next day. So yeah. I don't really think her death was ever really reported because it would be well into 2002 before local stories played on the local news. And her death is still unsolved, because who here remembers tiny details of life before the 9th of November? U/metal_face_doom responded. Before becoming America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani was highly scrutinized for his stop and frisk policy that targeted minorities in NYC. He gave free rein to the NYPD during his run. There was the high-profile case of police brutality and rape of Abner Loyouma with a plunger by the NYPD. Amadou Diallo was shot 41 times by the police in front of his home. Rudy was in hot water. Then 9/11 happened and people treated him like some type of hero. Now the cousin fucker is back to being the piece of shit he has always been. U/Saltpork 545 responded. System of a Down's Toxicity album came out like the week before. Seriously. I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened. The school went into lockdown while we were in physics and the vice principal pulled my teacher out, talked in the hall and came back a few minutes later with one of the old CRT TV VCR carts and we watched the news coverage until they dismissed school early for the day. I got Toxicity when it came out from a local record CD place. The kid to my right in physics was Joe. He went on to become an army ranger and died in Iraq. He borrowed my Discman that day to hear the album. I know, this is about everything but 9/11, but that's what I remember that definitely got overshadowed. If you like SOAD, that's a pretty big album. There was also a comedy starring Tim Allen that got delayed because it involved a plane blowing up. I remember that distinctly as well, but not the movie itself. U/pitiful_zucchini 8578 responded. Armin Maiwez. He is a German former computer repair technician who received international attention for murdering and eating a voluntary victim in 2001, whom he had found via the internet. Pretty gruesome stuff when you start to dig into the details. The guy recorded the whole process of the murder, preparing different cuts etc. Please don't make the same mistake I did and look up some of the stills from said video. That shit is NSFL. U/Uptown Sinclair responded. To be honest, the months leading into 9/11 were oddly chill looking back. I'm sure there were international crises happening, but the major news stories that were dominating the headlines leading up to September were shark attacks, which weren't events statistically higher than in previous years. There were just a few attacks that got a lot of coverage and that amplified the story, and the death of Chandra Levi, who was presumed to have been murdered by her boss California Representative Gary Condit. I worked in a store that sold TVs during this time and I swear this was all that was on. After the 9th of November these stories just disappeared. They weren't even a footnote in later news cycles. I had to Wikipedia just now to find out who killed Chandra Levi. U/Dairy_Ashford responded. Walking back to the dorm from the 24-hour computer lab early morning on the 9th of November, the story playing on the common room TV was yet another shark attack. That bizarro plane incident where the American military pilots bumped up against the Chinese plane, then crashed and were prisoners for a bit. SNL did a funny sketch about it with Tracy Morgan as one of the captive soldiers. I got some sesame shrimp right here. Also I think the pilot for the first season of 24 was delayed or pushed back a bit. Finale was in 2002 but it ended up being a great enough show to talk about. U/Christorius responded. Michael Jackson just finished the weekend reuniting with his brothers for a pair of sold-out shows at Madison Square Garden on Friday, September 7th and Monday, September 10th. These shows doubled as both an anniversary show of Michael Jackson's 30 years as a performer, and as a comeback from his legal and drug problems in the 90s, and marked the first time he performed in the continental United States since the early 90s on award shows, specifically the MTV VMAs in 1995. The Dangerous World Tour was cancelled by his first trial before the United States finale leg. The second show would end less than 12 hours before the crash. Guests included Macaulay Culkin, Usher, Chris Tucker, NSYNC, Britney Spears, Elizabeth Taylor, Destiny's Child, Whitney Houston, Samuel L. Jackson, 98 Degrees, Missy Elliott, Maya, Liza Minnelli, Aaron Carter, Slash, Monica, Nelly Furtado, Ray Charles, Gloria Estefan, James Ingram, Shaggy, and Marlon Brando. If a celebrity had a story about 9/11, they were probably in town for this show. Michael Jackson would become the story of the controversial urban legend that he, Liz Taylor, and Marlon Brando, in a dash to return to California, had a series of adventures in their road trip back. Controversial only because a British documentary about urban legends casted a white actor to play Michael. The episode remains unaired. U/Key Performer 9364 responded. Have you heard of Gary Condit? I'm sure most people haven't. But on the 9th of October he was the biggest story in the news. Congressman from California. One of his female staffers disappeared mysteriously, and it came out that he had been having an affair with her. He was strongly suspected of murdering her. A day later he must have been the happiest man in America, as nobody was talking about him anymore at all. U/Danthem and Writer responded. The dictator of Eritrea demanded the imprisonment of all politicians and journalists in the nation with opposing views of his ruling. This happened on the 23rd of September, 2001, when he knew the world's attention would be elsewhere, and he was right. Almost no one would speak about this unless he hadn't jailed a Swedish-Eritrean journalist, Dawit Isaak, which raised awareness of the imprisonment a few years later. On the 23rd of September, 2001, Isaak was arrested in his home in Asmara. At the same time, 10 other independent journalists and 11 prominent reformist politicians of the so-called G15 were arrested, ostensibly for demanding democratic reforms in a series of letters to President Isaias Afwerki. The independent press, including the Setit newspaper, had covered the confrontation between the president and the reformers. U/Satan's Lowell Helper responded. The US started spying on its citizens with all major telecoms. Except one that didn't, so they locked up the CEO for thinking his government T contracts would be honored. February 27, 2001, the NSA requested that Quest participate in its wiretapping program. Quest was allegedly the lone holdout, despite threats from the NSA that their refusal to cooperate may jeopardize future government contracts. A flurry in April-May 2001, when Nokia sold almost $39 million in stock. Indicted December 20, 2005 on insider trading charges. For those sales in April after telling the government T to pound sand. 4 bonus points after the 2005 indictment. On January 17, 2006, the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, on its own behalf, and on the behalf of 3 other organizations and 5 individuals, sued the National Security Agency, NSA, in terrorist surveillance program. International telephone and internet communications of numerous persons and organizations within the United States of America was unconstitutional and illegal, and ordered that it be halted immediately. U/Adventurous Rice 830 responded. A female intern named Chandra Levi was having an affair with a married congressman in D.C. when in May 2001 she disappeared. It was on the news every single day until 9/11, due to the salaciousness of the story. The media was trying to pin it on the congressman, making up all kinds of rumors like she was pregnant and he wanted to get rid of her, etc. It was later out that she was murdered by an immigrant and left in the woods somewhere. The congressman, Gary Condit, was vilified by everyone. He later said he was a bit relieved when after the 9th of November happened they stopped putting him on the news and following him around. Then when her body was found and the immigrant was arrested, he was finally vindicated. It was the biggest story that year until 9/11, after that you didn't hear any more about it except when her body was found. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.